to kick us off, I want to just welcome everyone and thank Rob and Chris for coming on the line today and talking about Luminate. We're doing this tech partner spotlight series this month and next month because at Firefly we work with organizations like Luminate Online and help support clients who work on those tools. And so we put out a tool guide every year, and just recently put out our most recent tool guide and featured a bunch of different technology in the nonprofit space that do different things to help support causes and missions. And wanted to shine a light today on Luminate Online and everything going on over at Blackbaud these days and what you guys have to show us. So to open it up, I'm going to introduce our guest, Chris Kane. Chris, actually, this is fun to talk to you today because I started my nonprofit career working on Luminate Online, and now we're here talking about it. And that was a long time ago, and I'm not going to say how long ago that was, but it was a long time ago. So Chris and I have actually known each other for quite a while because we used to work on the same team when we were both working. I think we were virtual administrators together, Chris, right?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have you here. I'll give you a couple of minutes here to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're doing and where you're joining us from.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, so I am in Austin, Texas, which, as some of you might know, was the headquarters of Convio before acquired by Blackbaud several years ago, and that's kind of how I met Taylor working on the digital teams there. So even since that time, I've been focused primarily on Blackbaud's digital solutions, which Luminate is a huge part of. So happy to be with you all today to talk through how Blackbaud thinks about digital engagement generally and how specifically Luminate is able to meet the needs of our customers and continue to grow as those needs expand and evolve.
Awesome. Cool. And I guess I did give it away because I started back in 2007 and it says it there on my slide right there. So there you have it. So just setting the stage on why we're here, and then we're going to get right into Chris actually showing off the tools and how it really fits into the context of kind of where we are today. That's where I wanted to start. And so here at Firefly Partners, we're a digital agency that works with organizations supporting their technology to actually help build better connection through digital tools with the people who volunteer for your organization, who give to your organization, and really looking at digital as a huge connection point. So that's a big part of our philosophy and why we want to talk about the latest and greatest in technology. Because the thing is we're all like sitting at home these days right now. Many of us working from home, right? We're hyper connected. We're on our phones all the time. And when you think about the mindset of your supporters, your volunteers, your donors, people who are interacting with your cause, they're also hyper connected right now. But the problem is a lot of times digital experiences can actually feel very disconnected, right? Something might be happening on Facebook over here and on LinkedIn over here and in an email campaign over here. And a lot of those times, those digital experiences don't feel very connected, right? And that often stems from a lot of different things, sometimes different departments working on things, or your tools, maybe you feel like they just don't talk to each other very well. And so what we really do is try to look at the fact that we don't think digital fundraising and having an awesome tool like Luminate Online should create this kind of relationship, right? Like, it's not just about taking the money. There's a lot more to it. And Chris is going to show us about how to actually use the tools to build those deeper connections and to recognize that your supporters aren't transactions. They're people who pre-COVID used to show up to events like this and run across the finish line and raise the money and participate, right? And people are still there on the other side of the computer right now. So our jobs as a digital agency and as technology providers like Blackbaud are to help empower you to create those human-to-human connections. As we think all of your supporters are unique, beautiful humans, and they deserve a connected human-to-human digital experience. So that's why we're here. That's why we at Firefly exist and why we like to talk about technology, because we actually help to take the technology and as an agency work with you on your digital program, creating those human connections. So without any further ado, Chris, I'm going to stop my share and pass presenter mode over to you and let you show things off.
All right, can you see my screen okay?
Yeah, looks good.
All right, thanks. So appreciate the intro, Taylor. And like she mentioned, Firefly does an excellent job of extending, optimizing, and just generally using the tools I'm going to be walking through today to really help organizations not just raise more money online, but really provide those strong connections with their community. And so this presentation is really going to cover what Blackbaud thinks about when we think about digital engagement for the organizations we work with. And a key way we do that is through the Luminate Online solution. So just a little bit more about me. As I mentioned, I am focusing primarily on the digital solutions at Blackbaud, and I've been doing so for over a decade. I'm in the Austin, Texas office usually, but these days I'm working from home like everyone else, and my hair is much longer than that right now, I promise. A little bit about how Luminate fits in with kind of the broader Blackbaud cloud solution. So it's an integrated fundraising and marketing tool that connects primarily with a Blackbaud database solution, but of course not exclusively with Blackbaud CRM tools, but really extending in communications and web content and transactions, that relationship that you have with your supporters. So powering online giving, peer-to-peer campaigns, as we'll see earlier, driving grassroots advocacy, and just generally keeping that tight connection to your supporters. Blackbaud and Luminate specifically is the leading digital fundraising solution with billions of emails delivered through the platform, billions of dollars processed through the platform, including at extremely high impact and velocity times around end of year, Giving Tuesday, being able to maintain that really high throughput and deliverability is something that we're quite proud of. A lot of the largest nonprofit organizations in North America trust Blackbaud to deliver these sorts of experiences and outcomes during crucial times, whether that is something like end of year or in crisis response times like we're in right now. And speaking of crisis response, the landscape for digital marketing and engagement has definitely evolved over the past few months, in addition to the evolution it's undertaken over the past few years. But today's reality around face-to-face fundraising being impacted, you're competing for attention and dollars with a lot of different charities and other sorts of institutions that are kind of requiring that you cut through the noise. The fact that many of events are canceled or have been forced to pivot to virtual, and a lot of organizations are thinking about how to diversify to really make up for lost revenue due to all of these things. But the good news is that just means that the best practices that Luminate helps enable and organizations like Firefly help deliver are really just more important than ever. So being able to lean in to what we know works in terms of growing those relationships, leveraging digital technology to drive that kind of more meaningful, more personalized relationship, but also helping administrators automate and outsource some of these workflows as well. And from the constituents' perspective, being able to provide that personalized, timely, relevant experience with the right calls to action, that's more important than ever. And then being able to set this up into the future where you can weather not just this crisis, but whatever the next crisis might be as well. So having sustainable, predictable revenue channels that grow with you over time. So all of these features and capabilities of the Luminate solution help provide those sorts of outcomes that I just described. I highlighted a few in green here that really help set apart Luminate, especially when connected to a Blackbaud database system, to really help use every piece of information and detail about the relationship that you have with a supporter to ensure that really personalized, dynamic connection to drive things like personalized communications, to drive things like sustaining year-over-year giving, be able to use things like engagement scoring to understand the relative level of engagement that your supporter has with you to determine kind of what next best offer or what next best step is appropriate for them based on that as part of a drip marketing or a multi-part campaign to really get them that right message at the right time. And then being able to use this information and use this data in a meaningful way to draw insights about trends and just to understand your audience a little bit better. So these are all the pieces of Luminate Online and how they all fit together. I'm going to walk through some visualizations and some examples of how it actually works to drive these sorts of outcomes. So obviously a picture is worth 1,000 words. So rather than just dwell on bullet points on a slide, I wanted to walk through a customer example here that is using the Luminate solution in a variety of ways, including in this case to just simply start that conversation by signing up for the e-newsletter at the Nature Conservancy's website. So all it takes is an email address to really kick off that journey with Luminate here. So when Catherine puts in her email address, it does a few things behind the scenes. Of course, it puts her in a group of people that might be interested in receiving e-communications, gives this opportunity to show her a second survey in which she can give a little bit more information about what sort of topics or interest categories are important to her. Of course, she can specify where she lives. All of this gives the organization the ability to do more localized, more preference-based communications. This is, of course, optional, though. So if Catherine X'd out of this follow-up survey here, she's already in the system and is already going to receive the communications that she signed up for. That can also kick off a multi-part journey for these new subscribers like Catherine that give a introduction or a literal welcome to the organization, maybe talking about ways to get involved, follow on social, fill out a survey to give more details about our preferences, fill out an advocacy action alert. We're not really asking for any money at this point, just really starting that conversation. Message number 2 in this multi-part series goes out automatically based on the frequency determined by the Nature Conservancy here. So a few days later, she receives a link to vote for her favorite nature photo. This does some clever click tracking or interest-based segmentation depending on which image she clicks on. So maybe she likes the ocean or the African savanna, whatever it might be that could flag on her profile that this is a topic or an area that she's passionate about or has an affinity towards. That can be used for further segmentation and other sorts of personalization going forward. Message number 3 in this case is actually a ask for a gift to become a conservation champion here. If Catherine had made a gift in the week or so before this message was set to go out for new subscribers, of course, she could be suppressed based on the logic or the criteria that these welcome series can support. In this case, she could click on this donate button from the Luminate email message. It goes to a Luminate giving experience that is mobile friendly. She's automatically in a logged in state, so known information like first name, last name, or street address can be pre-filled. The giving amounts can actually be tailored based on past donation history as well. So in this case, Catherine has never given to the Nature Conservancy before, so she sees the default options here. But if perhaps maybe she gave $1,000 last year, or her last gift was $250, the actual amounts that she sees here could reflect that based on that conditional logic as well. And one thing that's not visible on this actual screenshot here, though, is the fact that Luminate supports things like digital wallets, PayPal, Apple Pay, things like that for streamlining the checkout process. At that point, though, she's out of the welcome series. It's concluded. She's back into the regular kind of house file of the Nature Conservancy here and starts to receive their Great Places newsletter. If you remember, she said she lived in Chicago, so she sees the Illinois edition of that newsletter. There's really just one version that goes out, but it has conditional blocks of content based on things like geography, donor history, topics that she cares about. So in her inbox, she sees the Illinois version that highlights some Lurie Garden examples or whatever the localized story might be. Whereas someone that has never specified where they live, maybe they've never given, and the Nature Conservancy just doesn't know their address, they see the more generic North American version on the right. So all of these kind of steps here illustrate the way Luminate allows you to collect information in a flexible way, use it to present really dynamic, personalized journeys based on that constituent's connections to you, streamlines things like fundraising, as well as that continual personalization and dynamic nature of the communications. One more example here that's a little bit less focused on welcoming new e-news subscribers, but this is Lurie Children's Hospital, happens to also be in Chicago here. Every Valentine's Day, they do a pretty cute and fun e-card campaign where where you can share a story or send a message to the kids in the hospital. Like the other aspects of Luminate Online, it's mobile optimized, so it looks good on an iPhone, a desktop, or a notebook here. It's really fun and easy to connect. It's a lightweight way of sharing a message with the kids in the hospital by selecting an e-card here. That too can kick off these multi-part email series I mentioned earlier. So in this case, it's a thanks for brightening the day of a hospitalized child by sending a Valentine's Day card. Here's a couple of other ways to get involved, maybe become a social media ambassador. This was a pre-COVID screenshot, so it had some events that you might want to attend. And then one cool thing about this is on February 15th, so the day after Valentine's Day, a automated message went out to everybody who took action on that e-card campaign. So Lurie didn't have to run any special report and download a CSV and import a list of people. It automatically could target the people that filled out the e-card. In this case, it had a link back to their website where they had a cool photo gallery and some videos of them printing out the cards and sharing them with the kids in the hospital. And then also having a small donation ask here as well. So there's an option to make a special gift to continue to provide the most compassionate pediatric care, so that when you're reading this on your iPhone, it looks good, but then it also looks good when you go to the giving experience as well. So similar to the Nature Conservancy example, a lot can be personalized and tailored to the recipient on this page, but it's a really streamlined way of, in this case, taking action on a simple e-card campaign to becoming a donor. One other kind of small piece of this campaign that I wanted to highlight here is the automated nature of the year-over-year execution of this campaign. So as I mentioned, those are screenshots of last year's Valentine's Day campaign. This year, I received the invitation as well. So as someone who's taken action in the past, I was part of the audience that gets targeted or gets sent these reminders or these Valentine's Day 2020 emails here, as we can see. In this case, though, I did not actually take action. I didn't click through. I didn't fill out the e-card. So I got a reminder on the morning of Valentine's Day that there was still time to participate in this campaign, that it wasn't too late. I still honestly did not click through and take action. So I received a kind of a final reminder here on the afternoon of Valentine's Day that it wasn't too late to fill out the e-card this year. Again, this is something that no one had to manually slice and dice an audience to see who opened message 1 versus message 2 versus message 3. Luminate has built-in capabilities to include or exclude people based on that engagement. So engagement is really key to getting that right message to the right people at the right time. And this is an example of using some of those features to ensure that, if someone did take action immediately, they wouldn't receive message 2, message 3, things like that. I am kind of talking about email quite a bit here because it is a very significant aspect still in driving online fundraising. So over a third of donations are informed or sourced to an email campaign, meaning whether or not someone clicks through to make the gift right then and there, that gift typically, or at least a third of the time, is powered by a touch point from e-communication. So organizations that are not optimizing or even focusing on email are really missing out on a third of donation opportunities. So it's no longer a nice to have, it's a requirement to be optimizing and really strategizing on email effectiveness. And so Return Path, which is a industry leader in terms of deliverability, analytics, and just generally effective email marketing, published a report about the 7 habits of highly effective email engagement. And we're proud to say that Luminate helps check the box on all of these best practices that are essentially table stakes now for effective e-communication. So being able to have personalization, kind of that example we saw earlier where you're pre-filling information, you are tailoring the content based on geography and giving history, being able to conduct appropriate list management, so segmenting your audience, not just for people that have opted in, but for suppression of spam traps, and just keeping appropriate hygiene of your lists is crucial to getting to the inbox these days as well. And then you get into some marketing tactics around subject line optimization, A/B testing, ensuring deliverability. Things like that are more and more important, again, for cutting through the noise and driving that sort of action through email. And then being able to track interests. So I've talked a little bit about preferences and things like that and how that can determine audiences, but allowing that constituent to explicitly or implicitly inform you about the types and the frequency of communications they want to receive. That's important today as well to really cut through the noise and get to the inbox. So on that note, Feeding America has a link on emails that go out that asks for the constituent to define some preferences they might have around frequency. So you can use this in conjunction with Luminate queries and groups to take into account their preferences around the number of emails that they might receive. And of course, every email itself can have topic-based opt-in or opt-out status. So when someone is no longer interested in receiving the newsletter, for example, they can opt out of that topic, but still be generally reachable through Luminate messaging. That can also extend to other topics. You can have any number of these interest categories that allow people to, on their profile page or on forms and giving opportunities, being able to check boxes of the types of communications they want to receive from the organization. That can also result in very compelling member centers or personalized portals in which the donor can specify the types of topics they want to receive communications about. They can specify their updated street address. We'll talk in a minute here about how that also extends to a gift service center for managing sustaining giving. But Luminate provides all of these user-facing capabilities to ensure that you are accurately and appropriately engaging with these people online. Because personalization, it goes without saying, means you are having more effective communications strategies. So being able to use things like a marketing trigger or a behavior trigger to kick off one of these messages, but then also being able to weave into it information about maybe some modeling that you've done around sustainer likelihood with conditional language that reflects the ability or the likelihood that someone would become a monthly donor, being able to effectively cross-promote calls to action or giving opportunities based on what the person has or has not already done. This, of course, yields a higher response rate and ultimately has a much higher conversion rate when you are sending these personalized and timely messages. And that extends to the landing pages and giving pages themselves. I think we saw a couple of examples of what those look like, but this is an illustration of being able to make those more dynamic based on past giving history, based on status or preferences that these people have, so that when they arrive on your donation pages, not only is information pre-filled, but you're actually asking for the appropriate amounts. This yields a 5 to 10% lift on average of these dynamic ask arrays that makes sense and help upgrade people rather than downgrade them based on what you know about their past giving, about their wealth or their capacity to give. So information that might be in, say, Razor's Edge about a person's potential to give can be taken into account when they see these giving opportunities on Luminate pages. This is a little bit, a little geekier, a little bit more under the hood, but any system that's delivering email messages has certain baseline configurations or authentications that it needs to be able to do to help ensure reputable sender delivery status across the email service providers that are out there. So this pie chart here reflects sort of the Blackbaud powered as well as the customer powered configurations or specifications to ensure the high deliverability that Blackbaud is able to produce. So things like the authentication for different domain keys, for the actual architecture of the system that's pushing this message out the door, as well as more of the front end or user-facing aspects that help ensure by supporting things like spam assassin testing or validating the email before it's delivered, gives the organization control over some of those things as well. And then last but not least really is in the data hygiene and the list segmentation that Luminate supports through queries and engagement factors, as we'll talk about here in a moment, that really help ensure that you are targeting the people not just that are opted into email, but who are actually engaging, because that is a key element to what Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, Comcast, what they all are using to determine if a message goes into the inbox versus the spam folder versus the promo tab. You want to make sure you're reaching the people that are continually engaging with you. And that, of course, connects with flexible fundraising experiences. So being able to have mobile-friendly, user-friendly giving options. So whether that is a one-time gift or a monthly gift, whether that is an honor, tribute, memorial, whether it has e-card capabilities, whether it has other sorts of marketing information that you're collecting as part of these forms, whether it's specifying on behalf of a particular program or designation at the organization. You want to make sure that the giving experience is flexible and very constituent focused to allow them to truly personalize the gift that they are making to the organization. So we've seen, a couple of screenshots here that highlight just some of the flexibility that Luminate provides. It's not at all a cookie cutter approach to providing fundraising experiences. It is mobile optimized in the sense that it looks good no matter what device the donor might be using. It also takes into account digital wallets. So I mentioned Apple Pay earlier. We've seen some significant adoption and some success in increasing conversion simply by offering these digital wallet capabilities. So not only does it allow someone to not have to, take out a credit card to complete a gift, but it allows them to pay with their thumbprint or just by simply unlocking their phone to really streamline that checkout experience. So we've seen some significant adoption, as I mentioned, as well as some increase in conversion, where one organization saw a 44% increase in conversion for Apple users simply by having that as an option. So basically decreased cart abandonment by providing some of these modern digital wallet options for their supporters. And one massively growing trend that we're seeing among a variety of organizations that Blackbaud works with is a growth in sustaining giving. So driving that sort of predictable, sustainable, regular revenue channel is key and frankly the lifeblood to many organizations that helps them, as I mentioned earlier, weather not just this storm, but be prepared for the next one, because they do have that sustainable channel. And so with that in mind, Luminate has a lot of features built in that drive success in this sort of monthly or recurring giving. So it's very easy to take online gifts that repeat monthly or that recur at some sort of frequency through Luminate giving forms. Luminate will automatically process these gifts at the time and the amount of the donor specification. There are configurations and then autoresponders built in around success and retries and failure and things like that to help ensure that these are automatically and successfully processed. Blackbaud Merchant Services provides a credit card updater service that helps keep these recurring gifts going, even if the donor's card is lost, hacked, or stolen. It also provides a gift service center to enable the donors to manage the details of their recurring gift as well. So whether that is updating the credit card number or card that the payment is using, maybe they need to change the day of the month that it occurs. Maybe they need to skip a payment if necessary as well. You can even give them the option to cancel that recurring gift through this form as well. A lot of organizations disable that option and just simply say, hey, give us a call if you want to cancel this gift. But this self-service really helps, first off, take some administrative load off of the organization, so they don't have to manage all this through a phone call to the donor or from the donor. But it also helps meet some of the expectations that the donor might have from other kind of for-profit institutions that enable this management or this self-service of these recurring gifts in line with the expectations that they may have with sort of the subscription economy that helps kind of define that relationship as a very ongoing thing. So it's very much in line with what donors are expecting and even preferring in a lot of cases these days as well. So this support for sustaining giving is a key aspect of everything that Luminate is doing in fundraising. And as I mentioned, there's a big part of a successful sustaining giving operation is having this sort of credit card updater service that helps maintain this gift, even if the card is compromised and in some way or generally replaced by the donor. An important aspect of engagement for a lot of the organizations that Blackbaud works with these days is some form of grassroots advocacy, mobilization of their supporters, providing not just a fundraising reach, but more of a way to affect policy change, to generally mobilize supporters and just build energy and excitement. So accordingly, Blackbaud has advocacy capabilities that help you identify these potential advocates, really help you easily acquire them, whether it's the call to action to their congressman, whether it is a petition or a pledge, just kind of getting these people into that, into the system here as a supporter, as an advocate, and then leveraging a lot of that same automation we saw earlier to really drive further engagement, whether those are additional advocacy action alerts, whether those are other sorts of event or fundraising opportunities, just kind of growing that relationship with advocacy being a strong channel as well. Ultimately, this really empowers advocates to connect with elected officials. It allows them to reach editorial boards to help spread your talking points and maybe change the course of public debate, but really helping them feel like they're a part of your advocacy efforts to really help make an impact on your mission. So there's features within Luminate that help do that as far as maintaining that connection of elected officials, or rather that database of elected official contact information that connects supporters to their offices to help drive legislative action. From a more social connection, it helps drive petitions, pledges, and other sorts of social sharing capabilities, tweet at your rep type calls to action that really help go above and beyond just a simple web form. Connected with the marketing automation, it becomes particularly powerful in terms of getting that right message to the right person at the right time with the right call to action, whatever that might be. Maybe it's cross-promoting fundraising to advocates or vice versa. And then kind of following up on that, it helps show impact with things like Vote Center, what we call thank or spank messaging, which helps use some of that automation, but leverages constituencies or districts to get the right message to the right people, depending on how their elected official voted on a particular bill, for example. We'll talk more in a moment about kind of the open nature of the Luminate platform and how it connects with other tools. But we absolutely realize that Blackbaud and Luminate does not power every sort of user experience or does not have every feature that our customers would want or need. So on that note, we have some really strong connections via our APIs to support things like user-generated video with Gather Voices, doing canvassing with Grassroots Unwired, peer-to-peer texting with Hustle, Call Hub, and many others to really help provide all of these different experiences that aren't necessarily powered by Blackbaud, but connect with Luminate. So the data flows back and forth in a very useful way. So some classic advocacy campaigns include leveraging segmentation to allow people to connect with their elected officials, using the email capabilities that we've talked about already to drive these really compelling, personalized calls to action. And then when it comes to actually getting these messages to these elected officials, we're quite proud of our alert delivery numbers as well, working with organizations like Communicating with Congress to make sure that constituents and advocates are ensured that their messages are heard by their intended targets. This leverages the interests and the other sorts of segmentation that Luminate does already to have really personalized call to action. So if someone is particularly passionate about research or volunteering, those are the sorts of things that can be used to determine the messages that they get. It's easy to connect fundraising and advocacy. As I mentioned, we know that donors make the best advocates and vice versa. So be able to do that cross promotion as part of a single platform is very valuable. Being able to encourage more participation, kind of giving the next best related action that someone could take through that personal portal that we talked about earlier is a key aspect, or a key benefit rather, of having advocacy, fundraising, email all on a consolidated platform. Being able to show accountability and the impact with things like Vote Center and those thank or spank messages that I mentioned earlier, that's all part of what drives success in terms of advocacy for Blackbaud customers. Transitioning just a little bit here to peer-to-peer. So that's another key component of a comprehensive engagement solution. So Blackbaud, again, is the peer-to-peer solution leader. We have over 1,000 organizations using our tools, with millions of fundraisers participating on the platform, driving hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of revenue and progress in these campaigns. And that runs the gamut from large scale run, walk, ride campaigns that maybe have localized events across the country. As you can see, those are perhaps impacted this year by COVID. And so accordingly, TeamRaiser is flexible enough to support virtual participation for these types of events as well. And so whether these events are national scale events, we work with over 20 of the top 30 signature event series powered by Blackbaud's TeamRaiser to see massive success on a national level, or if it is more of a regional or local 5K, they all can benefit from the same best practices built into TeamRaiser to see a lot of success from a peer-to-peer perspective. This also includes more do-it-yourself or third-party or crowdfunding type campaigns as well, so less run, walk, ride focused and more personal fundraising campaigns as well, like this example from WWF here with Panda Nation that is also seeing success in this more DIY approach as well. And the reason all of these events are so successful with Blackbaud's TeamRaiser, which is the peer-to-peer component of Luminate Online, there's a few reasons for that. So being able to identify and acquire, recruit, retain participants, being able to make it easy for them to sign up, whether that's on a mobile phone, whether that's using geolocation to target their nearest campaign, whether that's maintaining the branding and the creative specifications that the organization would want to have, be able to use things like social login for returning participants. It's very easy to participate on Blackbaud's TeamRaiser. And then, of course, leveraging automation in terms of coaching to drive fundraising, kind of enabling these participants to be better fundraisers, to recruit their friends and family to join their team, or to reach out to solicit donations or thank donors. This is all part of the kind of the coaching automation that's built into Blackbaud's TeamRaiser, whether that is kind of in this scenario here, someone getting recruited as a returning participant, someone getting onboarded as a new fundraiser with a series of tips and tricks of getting started, sharing your contacts, updating your story, being able to leverage those best practices of peer-to-peer fundraising to drive people to your fundraising page and ultimately donate on behalf of your participation, being able to coach people to use the tools like sending an email through the participant center, for example. So that participant center is an area of particular focus that Blackbaud has optimized not just for mobile experiences, but also for social connections as well. I'll talk a minute about Facebook fundraiser integration with TeamRaiser that's driving a lot of success as well. But we've made a lot of enhancements to how that participant center functions to drive fundraising success for our participants. the ability to, as I mentioned, connect that with Facebook fundraisers, but also just have a one-stop shop when it comes to managing your team, your participation, your story, the contacts of your donors, of people who have donated but you haven't thanked, people that are on your team. This participant center is truly the mobile-friendly hub for engaging with your campaign and raising more money for the organization. One thing that's seen a lot of lift in terms of raising the amount that people are driving online is this connection with Facebook fundraiser. So I'm sure everyone is familiar conceptually with how it works. They've seen some sort of family member or former high school classmate that's raising money for some cause on Facebook. One of the things that this TeamRaiser integration does is it really helps move the needle in terms of how much the average participant is able to raise. Sometimes the hardest part of being a peer-to-peer fundraiser is asking for money. And so what Facebook does with its notifications, with its, some might say nagging that it does of your friends and family, that really helps do some of that fundraising recruitment for you, and can eliminate what we call $0 fundraisers, where people sign up to participate but don't actually raise any money. The Facebook fundraiser integration with TeamRaiser really helps eliminate some of that issue. So, and it's, you know, technically it's connected to it connects the TeamRaiser and the Facebook fundraiser progress and story and fundraising mechanism. So when someone makes a gift to this person's participation through Facebook, it actually uses the Blackbaud merchant services or uses the TeamRaiser payment processing system, as opposed to just simply getting a check from Facebook without any segmentation at some point in the future. It keeps these thermometers in sync. It pulls across the story, as I mentioned. So it's a very unified experience for this participant from their TeamRaiser page to their Facebook fundraiser as well. So I mentioned earlier kind of the nagging that Facebook can do to help drive that sort of revenue that we mentioned earlier. This is an actual screenshot of when I started to make a gift on behalf of one of my coworkers who was doing one of these things. And then, of course, when I X'd out of it, it not so subtly reminded me that, hey, you need to complete making that gift to Jeff as well. So this is one of the small ways that this is able to really move the needle when it comes to fundraising through Facebook.
Yeah, and I'll chime in there real quick, Chris, too, with like a personal story of just like turning on a fundraiser on Facebook that was using this integration with you guys' integration on Luminate, and like not even having to do anything, because Facebook then goes out and like automatically posts it to your wall. So I had friends starting to donate to my fundraising campaign before I'd even started asking anyone or even realized that it was like up there yet. And so it's really effective. And that's like an example of like kind of connecting the dots between the platforms to create that more, you know, connected experience overall across your digital stuff. So
Absolutely. Yeah, and then just for completeness sake, I wanted to highlight some of the features of Blackbaud TeamRaiser, which, as I mentioned, is the peer-to-peer component within the Luminate platform. There's a lot of the concepts that I mentioned earlier around supporting the registration, the fundraising, the gamification or the leaderboards, progress meters, badges, being able to kind of manage some of the logistical elements as well. So when this is, you know, when we return to the ability of having in-person events, being able to manage some of the day of on the ground registration, giving, things like that is very important. And all this is connected with that automation around coaching and kind of getting the right message to the right participants at the right time based on their progress towards a goal, their team or captain status, the days until an event. So being able to conduct that full sort of e-communication strategies with your campaigns is another one of the things that drives success with TeamRaiser. And so what this really means is that the Luminate solution helps provide a holistic journey for your supporters. So whether they're coming in through seeing a Facebook ad that's linked to one of your sign-up forms that can, you know, either get them opted into the e-newsletter, or it's a simple petition for them to sign their name. That can kick off one of those marketing series that I mentioned earlier that can, ultimately, hopefully drive them to make a donation. After that, you can continue to cultivate that relationship as an engaged supporter where you know what they're passionate about. You can use that to perhaps recruit them as a social ambassador, just generally give them content to share to their network. You can have surveys to better understand what they care about or how they would like to connect. You can offer peer-to-peer fundraising opportunities so they can actually raise money on your behalf. And then maybe ultimately connect that with what you're doing in the offline world with direct response or direct mail, and just have that kind of online and offline understanding of this person and what they care about and how they wish to support the organization. One last bit here about some of the technology in Luminate as a platform. I've mentioned APIs and just kind of the open nature a couple of times. So there's a fully documented, free to use series of APIs and web services that enable partners and customers and even Blackbaud to extend the tools into other platforms. So Facebook being a key example, and some of the other partners that we work with use these APIs to push and pull data from Luminate into other contexts. So what that means is you're not limited to simply what Blackbaud might develop as a feature, and you're able to connect that with other solutions to really provide kind of the best of breed set of capabilities that you might be looking for as an organization. And these are just a small sampling of some of those partners that I alluded to that help fill either some functional gaps that Blackbaud just does not do, or being able to extend into other applications or social networks some of the Blackbaud capabilities. So there's a lot of ways that the Blackbaud partners are able to extend the Luminate solution through the APIs. And I'll just wrap up here with kind of an overarching view here of what Luminate and digital engagement provides our customers. So ultimately, one of the key pillars here is world-class fundraising. So being able to have stable, secure, compliant, unified payment systems that really give you flexibility both in the look and feel of the landing pages, but also extensible with APIs. Being able to integrate this fundraising information with Blackbaud CRM systems like the Razor's Edge. But the open nature of Luminate means that information can be extracted or synchronized through other more automated methods as well. We talked about engagement a lot. That can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different organizations, but really getting that integrated view of constituents and their interactions through web forms and through email to ensure that you're getting the right message to the right people at the right time with the right calls to action, whether that is a survey, a donation appeal, or an advocacy action alert, whatever makes sense to that individual. A lot of organizations that adopt Luminate are able to consolidate point solutions, meaning they're not using a SurveyMonkey, an Eventbrite, HubSpot, all of these different point tools that do different things. They're able to bring that onto the Luminate platform to not only provide that single kind of constituent view from an admin's perspective, but the constituent then gets a coordinated, polished, consistent communication channel with that organization as well that takes into account the variety of different actions that they have. And all that being said, is Blackbaud is not intending to replace anything and everything that a customer might be looking to do online. So that's where partner technologies can really come into play, as well as those API connections I mentioned earlier. And then last but not least is really a support for a sustainable revenue channel. So really preparing and setting customers up for success with that next decade of growth. So whether that is sustainer giving, so being able to kind of drive that as a fundraising channel, whether that's just to generally deepen relationships and retain donors and advocates year over year, using targeted messaging, using dynamic ask arrays that reflect donor history, but really enabling you to diversify revenue streams with things like peer-to-peer advocacy to ultimately provide those compelling experiences for your supporters. So I'll pause right there. I know we covered a lot of different information. I don't know if there were any questions in the chat or any questions, Taylor, that you had about areas that either I didn't cover or we wanted to dive in a little bit deeper. But I'll pause there in case there's any questions. But that's really all of the material that I had.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. So I'll just open up the floor for questions. If you have anything that you want Chris to get into and, dig deeper on and specifically get into, let us know, type those into the chat and we'll ask Chris. One of my questions for people still hanging on the line, Chris, is just kind of overall, what does like an implementation timeline look like? I mean, I know right now with everyone having to pivot to virtual and more online and digital strategies. I mean, that's something that people are coming to us a lot about right now is like, what can people kind of like expect in your typical, Luminate implementation?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Obviously, it can vary depending on the scope or the goals of a campaign. Something like a virtual event launch could be deployed in just a few weeks, where a more holistic fundraising and email program could be a few months to deploy as well. We work with a lot of great partners like yourself and Firefly who can help really streamline that process as well. So being perhaps a little bit more nimble than even the Blackbaud team might be to help go live on some of these things. So you're looking at, I'd say, weeks to months in some cases, but definitely can be phased and can be onboarded in kind of strategic ways that align with your calendar, whether it's end of year strategies or Giving Tuesday, things like that. We can definitely work with those milestones to deploy in a phased approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just here I'll go back to my screen share and pull up kind of a little bit on that note and some contact information. So when we send out the recording and the slides, we'll shoot over Chris's team's contact info too. So if you want to learn more about the technology, you guys can get in touch with them. If you are looking to get up and running, our team does a lot of work with Luminate Online. I used to work at Blackbaud and Convio, and so we've built a lot of different types of programs on this platform specifically, and have a lot of expertise around, like what Chris said, like sort of a phased approach too. So if you're looking to get the technology and also the support to help you with the technology, this is just a little bit about where an agency like Firefly and a team like ours would come into place. Anything from making the website is really well integrated with it to helping you build out your email campaigns. I know it's end of year is right around the corner and Giving Tuesday, and starting to think through how you might use a technology like Luminate Online. And a lot of the different technologies that Blackbaud has, Chris showed us a lot on how to make everything kind of connect, because that's one of the beauties of going to a place like Blackbaud is you can kind of have your information and your data in one place to create those more connected experiences. And so our team can help you build the marketing and the strategy all around it. Lastly, you probably got the digital tool guide, but if you want to get in touch with me specifically, email me at taylor@fireflypartners.com. If you shoot an email to hello@fireflypartners.com, that hits our whole team and we can look at what you're looking to do with you and get you in touch with the right tools and the right thoughts around your digital strategy. So I hope this was helpful today and you learned something new about Luminate Online and Blackbaud and a little bit more about Firefly. Stay in touch with our series. We've got a whole series lined up for the rest of this month and into August to continue to show off more of the tools that we've featured, like Luminate Online, in our 2020 Digital Marketing Tool Guide. So I'll just check back in and see real quick if there were any other questions that came up. It doesn't look like it. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and
thanks everybody. Thanks, Taylor.
And thank you, Chris.